Welcome to the Married People Podcast, where we help you make marriage real, fun, and simple. Each week, we have honest conversations about one simple thing that can make your marriage better. Because when your marriage is better, everything's better. I'm CJ, and sitting around the table today, we have our resident newlywed, Afton.
Hi.
And we have our 22-year marriage veteran. He's an author, speaker, and the director of marriedpeople.org, Ted Lowe.
Hey, everybody.
And today on the Married People Podcast, we're asking the question, how can I be more positive about my spouse? Now, if we're being really, really honest, sometimes it's easy to get into a cycle of like just negativity and negative thoughts when it comes to your spouse. Like, oh, they're doing this or oh, they're doing that. Like, and you just get caught up in that. And before we go too far, Afton, we're just going to start this episode with the hard-hitting questions.
Oh, yes.
What?
It's like the Today Show.
Yeah, just
It's hard-hitting, like the Today Show.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you this question. This is going to sound just like the Today Show.
Great.
What is the deepest, most negative thing about Hudson there is? Because I know Hudson's listening. I know he listens to this podcast.
He like super listens. He listens more than I listen. I'll tell you the worst thing about Hudson.
Yeah.
Indecisiveness.
He's indecisive?
We got in the biggest fight of our lives about his indecisiveness in line at Jenny's Ice Cream.
How long ago?
Because the guy's like, we stood in line for a long time, and the guy's like, what flavor of ice cream you guys want? And I'm like, lavender, done. Hudson, what do you want? And he's like, and I'm like, we have been standing in this line for like 25 minutes. You didn't think about it?
To get Jenny's ice cream, you've got to
stand in line.
But hold on, we've never thrown our spouses on the.
Did you now?
Yeah.
Is Hudson going to be okay that you shared?
Oh yeah,
this very
totally. Whenever it's time to make a decision, he's so indecisive. I'll be like this is what happened last night. I'm like, what movie? We were trying to decide whether we were going to watch Men in Black 1, 2, or 3, and I'm like, which one do you want to watch? And he's like, well, how about number 2? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay, how about number 3? And I'm like, no. He's like, all right, let's watch number 1.
So
always, every time.
So we're asking, how can I be more positive about my spouse? And Ted, before we go there,
I need to ask Afton the question before we go there.
Afton.
Another hard-hitting question.
So the situation with Hudson, Jenny's Ice Cream, he can't make a decision. Is there anything positive in that you can find? Just like practice just a little bit.
A positive thing about being indecisive?
Yeah, just waiting for just like making that ice cream decision. There are a lot of flavors. I feel for him.
Maybe it's positive because he has less regrets because he's taken so long to make the decision that he's like gone through every possible scenario. So maybe he doesn't regret his decision as much.
Wow, there you go. You know what? So you get these little glimmers of like, Afton, that's great.
You're doing great, buddy.
Okay,
like
you know what you
that.
could do? Could you text him and say
No?
Okay.
I'll wait for him to listen to this podcast.
Okay.
Well, Ted,
CJ.
Ted, seriously though, like
Broke the man code, CJ.
I didn't mean to actually
turned it
throw
into something good.
Yeah, we were. I didn't know you were actually going to entertain my question there. So that was great.
I'm going to entertain every hard-hitting question.
Just like the Today Show.
Just like the Today Show.
But Ted, seriously though, we're talking about how can I be more positive about my spouse? And like I was saying a few minutes ago, it is easy to get caught up in negative thoughts about our spouse or, just saying these things in your head and then sometimes out loud. And it is deeper than just, hey, they're indecisive in the ice cream line. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, I'm actually going to let Jim Burns tell you a little bit more about that because Jim is actually probably the most positive human being on the planet. He's very, very smart. It's actually Dr. Jim Burns, but every time I've ever been around him, he is positive in every sense of the word. And so, so I can't wait for everybody to hear from Jim. But before we do, could you let everybody know a little bit more about Jim Burns?
Yeah, Dr. Jim Burns is the president and executive director of the Homeward Center for Youth and Family at Azusa Pacific University. He writes and speaks on the values of healthy leaders, of strong marriages, of confident parents, and empowering kids. And some of his most popular books include Confident Parenting and Creating an Intimate Marriage. Most recently, Jim co co-authored a book with Doug Fields called The First Few Years of Marriage, 8 Ways to Strengthen Your I Do. So he's going to be great to speak into this subject, Ted.
Yep. I love this guy. So let's go ahead and jump into the interview. Hey, I'm here today with my very good friend, Jim Burns. And Jim, I call you my spiritual grandpa sometimes. You're not old enough to be my grandpa, not my dad even, but do that because of our mutual friend, Doug Fields, who you poured into so much, and he poured into me and continues to do that. And so I'm very excited that you're here, buddy.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. And, I was just telling you before this started that, I've been selling your book. So you need to take me out to dinner because I'm telling you, I've been making, the big bucks for you. And, you're wearing nice shirts. You probably, at least I paid for that.
Yeah, Old Navy, they make the best, highest quality, right?
Exactly.
As we sit here in Newport Beach, California, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Jim, there's no one I know of that's got a bigger heart and works harder to help marriages and families. So one of the things that we do is talk to married couples, and each week we say we want to make marriage real, fun, and simple, knowing that people are going to be running, listening to this, or they're going to be driving to work. And so, again, thrilled for you to be here. And I thought, wow, we've got Jim Burns. Like what I ask him, because I know, you've got years and years and tons of books and tons of content. But you pointed toward this one thing and this idea of positive, will you say
positive
it, Jim?
adaptability.
Positive adaptability.
Say it 3 times.
Okay.
You can't.
I can't. Positive adaptability. All right. Tell us a little bit about what's the opposite of that, and then we'll dive into what.
Well, first of all, the opposite is what I call awfulize. And by the way, that's a brand new word in the dictionary. It's a real word. You can go to the dictionary. And awfulize means that you take everything to the worst. So, we're never going to have a good marriage. My husband's probably having an affair. Our son is probably impregnated the entire 5th grade class, or whatever it is. So that's awfulize. But the good side to that is, positive adaptability is really what I think we need to make a successful marriage work. And the good news is it's a learned trait. It's not something that you inherit. None of us inherited, being positive. Some of us are more positive than others. Some have a negative bent. But the truth is that you can learn. We talk a lot about discipline, and the Bible talks about discipline. In fact, Paul said to Timothy, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. Well, you can discipline yourself toward positive adaptability. And that's been both a personal issue for me in the last couple of years that I've been working on, and also something I've been speaking about a lot.
So what do you think makes us one way or the other? Do you, talk a little bit about why that's, the opposite of that is a negative thing. What does that do to a marriage?
Well, I think negativity takes a marriage down. Even criticism, Ted, that is right, when it's constant, it becomes negative and nagging, and it breaks a relationship apart. So I think we have to be real careful with how we use our words, if you would. And so the negative side is that, I'm the one who's saying it while somebody's, as you said, jogging or riding in their car. People don't want to be around you, including your spouse and including your kids a lot of times if we're constantly negative. Now, sometimes that's because we're imitating mom or dad, or we're imitating, we have a bent that way. But what I'm convinced can happen is that we can be more positive. And all the research in marriage is saying that when you are positive toward your spouse, that helps your marriage big time. And my big story in terms of where I kind of came up with the words positive adaptability, when I say came up with it, I put those 2 words together. But I was talking with Neil Clark Warren. I mean, everybody knows Neil Clark Warren. You and I are both jealous of it. He's 83 years old and he has fantastic hair. Okay? Yes. He's the eHarmony guy, right? Everybody knows who he is. And he's a marriage expert. He happens to be a Christian. He's a mentor for me. It has been for years. We went to the same grad school. And, many years apart, 20 years apart. But I said to Neil, if you could give one gift to a married couple, what would it be? And he didn't pause. And he said, adaptability. And I said, why? And he said, well, because stuff happens. And you're either in the middle of a crisis, you've just been through a crisis, or you're going to have a crisis. And it might be in your relationship, but it might be with your kids or life or whatever. I mean, you know this. I mean, you're real, and that's our world. He said, but people who are more adaptable, they do a better job at keeping it than people who aren't adaptable. So they have the same problems. It's just a matter of that they have an ability to kind of put it on their shoulder and then kind of, take it off. And it's not some kind of fake Pollyanna thing, as much as it is, really, I'm going to go back to it, a discipline. So that's why then I added the word positive adaptability, because positivity toward your spouse makes your relationship better. All studies show that. John Gottman, who's everybody's hero in marriage research, says this. And then the adaptable side means that if we're willing to be adaptable, then we're going to do better. We're going to do better in our marriage relationship, also with our children and with our friends. We're just that way. So why not become a more positive, adaptable person?
Could not agree with you more on that. And one of the places that I've seen it the most is I work occasionally with an organization called Miles Apart, and they work with families who have children with autism. And WindShape is this great retreat center in Atlanta that Chick-fil-A graciously supports. And one of the things that they will do is they'll allow couples to come in who have children, that are on the spectrum and just have a weekend, just the two of them. And a lot of times they have not been away from their child ever. And so here they are with 2 or 3 days. And so I'm sitting here with these couples, and I've probably done this a dozen times. And I'm driving home, and I thought, what's the difference between the couples that are thriving despite of and because of their child having autism and the ones that it's absolutely tearing apart? Because, we know the divorce rate is off the charts. And it hit me. It wasn't the severity of the child. It wasn't the amount of help. It wasn't the finances, all the killers, all the different things. It was literally a mindset. It was literally an attitude to adapt, but also to be positive and to support. Like the one lady gave this great example. She said, I used to get so frustrated. I'd stay home with the kids all day, and my husband would come home, and the kids are like, Daddy! And they would go run and play with him. And she said, it would just make me so mad. Here I have, I've worked for you all day, and you never that excited with me. And then she said, you know what? Then one day I decided, I guess, to be positive and to adapt. I'm just going to get in on the fun. So she just dove in on the pile of that. But I thought that's adaptability and that's positivity. And it's a mindset that literally keep people either together or apart.
Well, you said the word mindset, and really a healthy marriage is partly a mindset. It's your reflex reaction. I was talking with a friend of mine actually not too long ago, and he has what I call a high maintenance marriage. Kathy and I have a high maintenance marriage. We've been married 43 years.
Talk about that for a little bit, because you've always talked about that, and I thought it was so clarifying. What's the difference between a low maintenance marriage and a high maintenance marriage?
Low maintenance marriage is one that you really don't have to work as hard at. Maybe you both came from very functional backgrounds, or you have an incredible compatibility, or at least one of the spouses, and you and I know one. We won't say the name, but we know a spouse who's the woman is phenomenal. The guy's a little high maintenance, but she keeps it to be low maintenance because she's so healthy. Well, a high maintenance means that they both, it's like a car. I love, I drive a Mini Cooper, so I don't have a fancy car, but I love some of the high performance cars. Those are high maintenance cars. You got to be working on it all the time. My neighbor, he's always, he's got the hood up. I don't even know what's going on under the hood, but he's always working on this high maintenance car. So he's keeping it fine tuned because he's working on it. So a high maintenance marriage means that the illustration would be for Kathy and me. I came from a family where there was alcoholism. Kathy came from a family that was just a little crazy. And, when we came together, we thought it would be good. We had just become Christians. We were excited about youth ministry. And so we said it's going to be easy. And it wasn't, because we were bringing our baggage into that.
Sure.
So we had to learn, and have continued to learn, how do you make a good marriage even in the midst of a high maintenance one. But again, going back to that, one of it is mindset. So my friend, I said, how do you guys do this? And he said, well, I can't always react to some of her negativity or some of the things that she's going on. And I love her deeply, and I have to be focused on that mindset. But it's my reflex reaction to be positive. And I said, well, tell me about reflex reaction. He said, well, reflex reaction is you have a habit. So you're driving, and your reflex reaction is you always, look behind your shoulder or whatever. It's just, we've all learned it. We don't even think about it when we do it. Well, his reflex reaction was positivity. So back to the mindset. John Gottman, who I mentioned earlier, calls it the magic ratio. And he says for every one negative thought or communication that you have with your spouse, you need 5 positive ones. And that's, he said, a good magic ratio. He said 1 to 1, he goes, you're probably bound for divorce. Well, there's a lot of marriages that are 1 to 1 or even worse sometimes, but that means they're struggling like crazy. So it means that having the discipline, roll up your sleeves and say, okay, I'm going to be positive. And I do this with Kathy, where I practice what I call thank therapy. What that means for me, and Doug Fields, our mutual friend, teases me because it really is part of my mindset in life. He teases me because I talk about it all the time. But, I just have to sometimes say, Lord, thank you for, she's an incredible mom. Thank you for the amazing wife that she is. Thank you for her deep desire to help kids. You mentioned autism. That's what she's been a teacher with kids who are on the spectrum someplace with Asperger's and autism and other issues. Kids learn differently. And she's phenomenal. Well, I could also find things that bug me about her, but I also have to be reminded regularly of all the good things. And when I do that, all of a sudden they outweigh, whatever it was where she snapped at me or, something, silly took place. That's developing the mindset. So positive adaptability is developing this mindset that I am one of the luckiest guys in the world, and I love her, and I'm so proud to be her husband, despite the fact that, a sinner married another sinner, and now we have sinnerlings, and, it's just a problem, okay? We mess up. So to me, that's a way of having a successful marriage.
Wow. To that point, we had Shanti Philhan on a couple of episodes ago. She's come out with a new book called 30 Days Kindness Challenge. And so one of the things she asks you to do is to say one thing kind and to do one thing kind for 30 days. And so I thought, and then there's an assessment. And so I thought about myself. I'm thinking, I'm a pretty kind guy. I'm a nice guy, or nice enough, I thought.
I think you're a nice guy.
Well, thanks.
I'm not married to you, but I think you're a nice guy.
And probably nicer. The ironic part is I think sometimes we're nicer to, we're more adaptable with
totally.
people that aren't living in our house. And so, excuse me, one of the things that I thought, I'm going to really focus on my senior in high school. And I realized really quickly that I wasn't being as kind as I thought. I wasn't as positive. I have not adapted in such a positive way with him changing and him growing up and becoming a man like I thought I had. And it really helped. How do you think, most of us, how do we self-assess like where we are? Because I think that's important, especially if people are listening and they're going, I'm positive. I'm just married to the negative one.
Right.
Like talk to those. How do we find out kind of where we are on that spectrum? And then once we know, like, what's some steps that we can take?
Well, part of it is self-reflection, of course. And like you say, sometimes we think we're nicer than we really are. Sometimes it's actually reading a Shanti Feldhahn book and going through her kindness challenge. I mean, honestly, and then kind of going, wow, I can do better. What that did is it focused you more with your senior in high school. But I think also it's, if we're in any kind of a relationship, in accountability to say, hey, help me understand how I'm coming across. And then frankly, I also think our spouse will tell us. What's interesting about our spouse is sometimes when they do, challenge us or when they do have a concern or a complaint, it's sort of true. So, I've heard Kathy say to me, Jim, I feel like you're so positive around other people, but I don't feel like you're being as positive toward me. So, after a while I go, well, I'm a lot more positive than you are in my head, but the truth is she's right. So what I have to do is at least take 10% of her criticism and go, okay, how can I work on that? Because the truth is I can't change her, but I'm pointing a finger at her. There's three fingers pointing back at me. So I go, okay, I can be more kind. I can be more, positive. I can be more adaptable. And even in Shanti's book, which I'm laughing because at the last Refreshing Your Marriage season that Doug Fields and I did, we sold out on your book and we sold out on Shanti's book, which had just come out. So we're better at selling other people's books than ours.
What book do we need to sell of yours right now?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
But one of the things Shanti says is nix the negative. I mean, that's one of the 3 points of her kindness challenge. And so kind of going back to that idea of negative, if I can hear negativity coming out, and I can always justify it because I think that it's true. But should I have really said that? I mean, so for me, one of the principles in positive adaptability, besides nixing the negative, is, do I really need to say this? And so what I have to do is stop and have the discipline to go, does it really matter? Do I really need to say it? Because, and those are, I guess, 2 different phrases, but like for me, does it really matter? I mean, so Kathy, rolls the toothpaste one way and I squeeze it the way Jesus would, of course. And, does it really matter? I mean, it could. I mean, we could get really angry at each other, but it's not going to change anything, so does it really matter? Do I really need to say, you know what, I think you do the toothpaste wrong, no offense to you, but, this is the way that, again, Jesus would do it. So I just have to have that ability to do that. Well, part of it is listening to Kathy say, I can't believe you care that how we do the toothpaste tube. And you know what? She's right. So I just have to sometimes swallow my pride and go, you're right, and it doesn't really matter. But that's a great question to always have in your head. Does it really matter? And then, do I really need to say this? Field says this, and it's in every one of the books that we write together on marriage, is don't say everything you think. Well, that's a great phrase, that sometimes we just need to have the mindset that I don't need to say everything I think to my spouse. Frankly, it would be scary what I'm thinking. So, just button my mouth. And again, I don't think we fake positivity. I don't want any of your listeners to think that we're talking about fake Pollyanna stuff here. But, there's always a way that we can be more adaptable and more positive than we typically are.
Right, and it's what we choose to think of, right? It's what we what am I choosing to think? It's like you said, it's the think therapy. I think it was Gary Smalley who kept a journal of positive things about his wife that he would continue to write into it. He said when they would get frustrated with each other, he would go, he would read his book, and it would change his mindset.
Yeah, well, I had an experience, and I'll make this short, but Kathy and I had done a week at Mount Hermon, which is a Christian conference center in the Northern California. It's a beautiful, incredible place. One of my favorite places. 6 miles from the ocean in Santa Cruz. It's in kind of like mountains with, trees. And it's just awesome.
Great place to suffer for Jesus.
Very much a great place to suffer for Jesus. And it had been a wonderful week. And then we spent 2 days in Carmel, kind of having second honeymoonish. I wish I could say we were at the fanciest hotel. We were at the cheapest hotel in Carmel. But we ate at this favorite Italian restaurant, and we had long walks and lots more time for romance. And just all, it's what you're dreaming. It's a beautiful time. Not you're dreaming about that, but it's a dream type of thing.
It's a dream.
I looked at your face and, there you go. But anyway, we're driving and we're going to see our daughter Heidi, who was living in Central California going to college. And she goes, "Hey, Jim, I think you're getting a double chin." And for some reason, all of my insecurity about, gaining some weight and all this, I got so mad at her. So instead of saying anything, I just got quiet.
Right.
Because I pout and, kind of stuff. So we're driving, and she's totally forgetting it because she's like, "Oh my gosh, look there's whales." We're going down Highway 1, which is the most beautiful, drive in America. And she's going, "Oh, I just love that. And look at the waterfall here and look at these things." And I'm getting more and more mad at her. And finally I hear from God in a quiet, still, small voice, "Practice what you've been learning, practice thank therapy." So I said, "Thank you," with my teeth gritted. "Thank you for Kathy. I can't believe she thinks I have a double chin." Now, all of your listeners want to see a picture of me to see how bad my double chin is.
You don't, Jim. That's just it.
When I looked in the mirror, when you look up, you don't have a double chin either. So I said, this quiet in my own mind. She's still off saying how beautiful this is and paying no attention to me. And, I'm thinking, well, she's an amazing mom, so thank you for this. And I just started thanking. And all of a sudden, I pulled my arm around her. I gave her a kiss. I don't suggest people do this when they're driving on a highway. But I gave her a kiss on the lips. And I just said, "Hey, it's been a great weekend." And she goes, "Well, I thought you were mad at me because I said you had a double chin." I go, "Let's talk about that later." My point being is that my circumstance had not changed, but my attitude changed because I was focusing on the good rather than Kathy. I don't think Kathy should have said I had a double chin right after that. My goodness, we just spent 2 nights and days gorging ourselves with fun food. But, eventually I realized that there's a lot more and better qualities. And it was a mindset, back to the mindset change. We can all do that, Ted.
Right. And it's so difficult for those of us who are words people.
Yeah.
And Nancy would say, she goes, when we get frustrated with each other, she goes, "I lose my words and you find yours."
Yes. Yeah.
And so she's more the guy in the relationship where she'll say things that she probably shouldn't have said, and she didn't mean anything by it. Or it's like, "Oh, getting a double chin," different things. And as a words person, I'm like, "I would never say that to you. That really hurts," And I think we sit in this thing of going, "I would never do that to you. That was hurtful. That was mean," and it robs it could rob your vacation, this beautiful vacation. I just feel like there's those moments that just need that moments of grace to go, "Wow, that stung a little bit," but you chose the mindset. And I think a lot of people get caught up in, "I'm right," and a lot of times you are. Right? You are right. That was not okay. I don't think anybody would disagree with you that was a hurtful statement. She shouldn't have said it. But at the same time, you're going, "Okay, I'm going to change the mindset."
Yeah. Well, it's that great theologian Winston Churchill. I'm not really sure he was a theologian, but I call him that. He said, if you throw stones at every dog that barks, you'll never reach your destination. And so if our destination is to have a thriving marriage, not a perfect marriage, but a thriving marriage, one that's good and one that's intimate. Intimate means connected. Then we can't throw stones at every dog that barks, or we'll never get to the destination. And so for a lot of times, it just does mean, zip the lip and move on. Is it that bad? And we used to laugh about my wife Kathy because we were in London one time. I did my PhD in London, so my kids were there, and and we were walking by, and they have something in most of their little towns called Citizens Advice Council. And we go, you could be the president of the Citizens Advice Council. Well, it's true, but I should not have led the way with my own children, all saying that together. It was not a smart thing, I'll tell you. But the funny part of it is that that's her love language. So when she says to me, I think you're getting a double chin, she's not doing that at anger. She's doing it because she goes, you know what, I want you to be healthy, and, you probably shouldn't have eaten, 2 slices of cheesecake. One would have been fine, and actually a bite like she had was just fine. But again, the point being that I have to also look back and say, how is she communicating? Is she communicating to me like this because of hate, or to make me feel bad, or is she doing it because she honestly thinks that's her way of a love language? Now, we can work through that communication-wise, but even in the negative side, I can look at the negative and kind of go, well, she did that with pure motives, not with some kind of motive to make me have a bad day. And even in that case, I can go, okay, I can live with that.
Right. That you give them space. And Doug does say often, you don't have, just because you think it, like you said earlier, just because you think it doesn't mean that you have to say it. Because I know so many times this thing, I say something and then I just want to grab it and put it back. Oh, this is going to make for a very awkward afternoon. I am
Exactly.
what was it the other day? Like, Nancy is so disciplined with diet and exercise, and she walks in and she teases and kind of flexes, and I said, "You're a hoss." That's a Southern thing. You're a hoss, and she goes, "No woman wants to be called a hoss." And so, and then I start doing, and I start trying to dig my way out of it. No, that's not what I mean. I just mean you're just muscly, And it just got worse.
Since I don't speak Southern,
Yeah.
Are you saying horse or house?
House, HOSS, house and boss. You a house. That was a Southern thing. Her dad's a football coach, and so it was a common phrase to say that guy's a hoss. So to compare my wife with a athletic football player was not the way to go. But it's those moments where I'm going, all right, verbal processor Ted, okay, words float out there. I've really had to learn to go, wow, and there's just certain things she's super sensitive about, and that's one of them I have to be extra careful about. But it's going, even though my heart was trying to affirm, it was hurtful. So I think that's been one of the things we've had to learn at our house, just to go, all right,
Well,
got to be careful.
2 things I learned. One is, I know that Nancy's in great shape and she takes care of herself and she's beautiful, and you married way above yourself. But, that's another thing.
Absolutely.
But secondly, I learned a new word because I had no idea what you were even saying. I don't speak Southern, so I didn't have any idea here in Newport Beach, California, what you were even talking about.
Yeah. Well,
I thought you called your wife a horse.
No, but this is pretty close.
Yeah.
So, don't call Kathy a house.
Okay.
So we're not going to do that. So, Jim, one thing we want to do each podcast is, we have these great conversations. We get to talk to great people like you and say, okay, in the name of positive adaptability, Jim.
Oh, good job.
There we go.
See,
There we go.
it's positive. I'm being positive, George. Good job.
I did this when I recorded the book. Like, there would be like 3 words that were pretty normal, but like that's not a huge word, right?
Right.
And I thought the guy was going to like shoot me in the neck. I just couldn't get past him. And so I was like, can we get someone else to come in and voice it over? I just can't get past it. But we want people, say, what is one thing, until they hear from us again, what is one thing that they could work on this week?
Yeah.
In the name of this.
I honestly, and I'm kind of smiling because of our mutual friend, Doug Fields, because he teases on this, but I think if you could write just a few words down why you're thankful for your spouse, even if you are mad at your spouse right now, but what are the reasons why you're thankful? And you were thankful at one time. So write those down and then actually verbalize that to your spouse. Now, there may be some that think you're drunk when you said it if you haven't done it for a good long time. But honestly, verbalize it to your spouse, and it's a real affirming experience. I was just in Guatemala, and I was doing a marriage conference, and toward the end of the conference, I said, say 3 good things to each other, and I turned around, got a drink of water, and looked back, and they were all kissing. It's the passion of Latin America. I go, wait, I didn't tell you to kiss. I just said say good things. But what it was is it was a natural tendency for these people to now show appreciation physically, which was really cool, frankly. But I kind of still laughed about it. But honestly, what if they practice thank therapy? I practice it. I did it today. I actually wrote your name down because I knew I was going to be with you. I write down 20 reasons why I'm thankful every day. It's my discipline as part of my journal. And it's funny, our mutual friend Doug Fields, who we keep talking about, he's on there often. But it's people's names and it's experiences and whatnot. that helps me with my mindset to focus on that on a regular basis. And it helps me on my mindset with my relationship with my wife when I do it on a regular basis too.
Well, and Jim, I think that's the thing. Every time Jim Burns' name comes up, anybody that knows you knows that you live this out, knows who you are. I just think how positive that you have always been with me from the first day that I met you to when we started Married People. When I moved back to Atlanta, every time I would see you, it was always something positive. It was always something encouraging. You live this out, my friend. And so I think this is a great message for people. You know, if you tend to be negative, wow, the great idea about this is to say you don't have to be, that we can choose a different behavior, right?
Right. It's a matter of choice. And you're easy to be positive because you're a great guy, and Nancy's even better. So there you go.
She is absolutely better. But Jim, I've always appreciated that about you. You need to. This is your next book, right?
Well, it's a chapter in Doug's and my book called The First Few Years of Marriage that came out just a few weeks ago. And we want to build a foundation because, again, the divorce happens in the first 4 to 5 years. And so when you can help in your foundational deals, if you could learn this trait in the first 4 or 5 years, it would be so beneficial to a relationship. So it may be a book one day. I mean, honestly, it's a huge thing in my heart right now.
Gosh, can you imagine? Like, I would love to rewind to our first few years of marriage and say, hey, this is a huge, huge thing. And so where can people find that book?
Anywhere. You can get it on Amazon. You can buy it at homeword.com.
Right.
But it's out, and we're really excited about the reviews right now. People are actually saying they like the book. And you know what's cool is people who aren't even in the first few years are buying it and passing it on to younger couples who are, giving us some really good stuff. I'm amazed that it's only been out for a few weeks, and I'm amazed that people have just, kind of devoured it, read it, and already given feedback.
Well, Jim, one of the things we want to do at Married People and on this podcast is we want to be really pro-millennial because we feel like millennials are getting beaten up. And one of the things that we love about millennials is they really do want a great marriage, and they want to be great parents. And so it doesn't surprise me that they're saying, hey, here's something that could help my marriage. I want it to be great. And I can't think of a better book for them to do that. You guys have killed it with this one. It's just it's positive all the way through. So thank you, sir.
Great to be with you, Ted, as always.
All right. Talk to you again soon.
Okay.
Can we do this again
Let's
soon?
do it anytime.
Can we do it on the beach next time?
Sure.
Okay.
We're at least 1.5 miles from the beach right now. So we'd have to go all the way down to the beach where I just had my Bible study. I was just telling you that. You went to a restaurant that I was at this morning, and it's on the beach. It's not bad. There's the sand.
Well, Jim, thank you for, again, suffering here in SoCal for us all.
Absolutely.
I will say this: you have leveraged the beauty to help families. So thank you for that.
Got to make it happen.
Thanks, Jim.
Well, Ted, that was some super insightful conversation that you had there with Jim, for sure. And, I guess the big idea, obviously we're asking the question, how can I be more positive about my spouse? And he's really boiling things down to just this idea that positivity toward your spouse makes your marriage better. And we know that intuitively a lot of times, of course, negativity toward my spouse is not going to be that helpful. But Ted, you're the marriage expert here sitting around this table right now. And I just want to ask you, what's at stake if we stay in that negativity cycle? You know what I mean? And we never do make that shift to being more positive about our spouse. What's at stake?
Gosh, I think this, there's degrees of everything, right? But I think what's at stake for some people is they're going to miss out on having a great marriage, and they're just going to have a good one because of this. But I also think it's a mindset of negativity that could lead somebody to say, I just can't do this anymore. I don't want to be with you anymore. I'm done. And so I think it's huge how we view each other and how we see each other. And, all the research shows that as well. One of the things that they found that healthy couples do is they give each other the most generous explanation for their behavior, and they believe it. And so it's truly love is blind. It's a decision to see them in a positive way.
Yeah, it's just like, sometimes I hear these conversations, and it really is a great, conversation. But sometimes my temptation is to be like, well, that's a nice to have thing. It's a nice to have. Like, it's nice to, if I can shift my thoughts and my what I say toward Terry, in a more positive direction, that's going to make my marriage better. That's a nice to have. But sometimes I think realizing what's at stake if I don't intentionally start to move that direction. I think it's just important to sometimes feel the weight of that a little bit.
Well, and it's what you think of. Think about what's pure, what's noble, what's righteous. I know for me one of the most dangerous things I did for our marriage early on was this whole thing of negative thinking. I remember we had just moved from California to Georgia, and I didn't want to move to Georgia. I wanted to stay in California. And so, but we had made that decision together. But somehow in all my processing, I'd forgotten that we made it together. And I started thinking through, well, she made this decision. And I remember mowing the grass when we first moved back here. And I'm going, look at this. This is stupid. We don't need we need access to a park. We don't need to own one. Look at all this, what is this? This is so ridiculous, And then it starts going, I would still be in California. I would probably still be in California, but she gets her way. And, she always gets her way. So this is what's going on through my head. And she and I have talked about this. I mean, she's given me permission to share this. And so I just remember coming in just loaded, ready to go. Just loaded, ready for a fight. And when you start thinking that your wife is manipulative, when you start letting those thoughts take you to that place, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. It's a big deal in how you treat her. It's a big deal in where you go.
Do you want to know what I do?
We always want to know what you do after.
Yes.
Because sometimes I get in that where like you do start labeling behavior and you're like, oh, well, he's like leaving his stuff all over the house because he doesn't care that I spend all the time, keeping this place clean or whatever. And you start like getting into like this negative cycle and then you look at him and you're like, ugh, I can't believe it. And what I do is sometimes I like make myself stop and I think, he is cooler than you. And I like make myself think that like
That's your positive thinking.
he is better than you. You're like, I'm trying to like elevate him above myself. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? He is awesome. And then I remember all the ways that he's awesome. Like he is cooler than me for XYZ. And then I, see him and I like kind of break the cycle of negative thoughts and I start seeing him in a positive way.
That's a great example. Great example going, okay, you're cooler than me because you can kick back and relax and you don't worry about this as much as maybe as everybody else. That's powerful. CJ, you said it. There is a lot at stake in this, and this could really change things. It really, really can.
Yeah. Well, I know that the idea of, okay, we need to, how do I be more positive about my spouse? That's kind of a big, high level conversation. But again, what we always love to do here, Ted, is boil things down. And you asked Jim, what's the one simple thing, like if we want to start moving in that direction, what's the one simple thing that we could do ourselves this week and that anybody listening could do themselves this week to begin to move in this direction? And he said, write down a few words about why you're thankful for your spouse, and then share those words with your spouse. So that's kind of our challenge this week, right?
Yeah, I'll probably just text him.
Yeah,
there you go.
And you know what? That is totally okay. I think sometimes, we talk a lot about, becoming your best us, be the best version of who you are as a couple. And for you, if that's a text, because I'll think, stereotypically it's men that this is harder for to verbalize. But, about 25% of the time, it's the female. So, it's the female like it's an animal.
The females.
The female. That sounded terrible. It's
Female humans.
Female humans. But, it's a text. It's a text. It's a Post-it note that makes things better.
Yeah, and I know sometimes it feels so cheesy for me to sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to write down a few words why I'm thankful for Terry. And then it's even cheesier to give that to her or say that to her or text it to her. But then I think I never think it's cheesy when Terry says that stuff to me.
So what are you thankful for about Terry?
Hard-hitting questions. Go, CJ.
Terry is so selfless. There are, and I know that's probably cheesy to say.
It's not cheesy.
But I mean, even something as simple like yesterday, we ran out of coffee and, I forgot to tell her about it. Like we ran out of coffee. I make coffee every morning. And this morning our coffee container was full again. And as I was walking out the door to, come here and record, I was like, oh man, we're out of coffee again. Or, but she had refilled that. And it was just that small moment that I'm like, golly, she's so good at that. And I struggle with that so much because I am so focused on what I have going on that day. So that is just one huge thing that I know feels something like, oh, we could all probably say that about our spouse, but I really deeply feel that about Terry. What about you?
That's a good one. Me too. Also, I think Hudson's selfless. That's mine too.
And how is he selfless?
He pretty much just like does everything all the time. And I'm like, thanks for doing that. That's pretty much what he
That's
does.
great. No, I would
But I think like when you tell your spouse that, it doesn't have to be like, dear Hudson, thank you
Right.
so much for being so selfless all the time. Like, I'll probably just be like, hey, thanks for being selfless. Thanks for being funny. Thanks for making me feel good about myself. Bye.
And it is amazing. Literally, I'm sitting here. I'm like, you know what? She's also super understanding and patient. And like, you start to
Yeah.
when you just give yourself a second to go down that road of like, I'm going to think positive things about Terry. More things start to flood your mind. It is weird. So I'm just sitting here
You just
thinking about
open the
that.
floodgates. Yeah.
But so, Ted, do you have anything else before we wrap up today?
No, I think you guys have hit it on it perfectly. I think you're exactly right. When you start this idea of what am I thankful for, there's actually a lot of things. And I think people get caught up in, why didn't you get the coffee? You know, 'cause
Yeah.
she could have very easily be like, hey, you know what? We both work. Like, where's the coffee?
Right.
And she would have been right?
Yeah.
She would have been right. But for us to stop and say, wow, that's a great thing about her. It's huge.
Yeah. Well, Ted, thanks for bringing Jim Burns onto the podcast today. That was, again, a terrific conversation. And thank you for joining us for the Married People podcast. We hope that today's episode helped you realize that marriage is a little easier than you think. And if you enjoyed today's episode, we would love for you to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes if you're not already. You know, leave a review for us on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts, because your review will help us make this podcast better, and it helps us reach more people with these conversations, more married couples who need to hear this stuff. And finally, for more great resources to make your marriage better, check out Ted's book. Ted Lowe actually wrote a great book called Your Best Us, and you can find it wherever books are sold. And if you want to find more resources for your marriage, visit marriedpeople.org. That's also where you will find the show notes for this episode. And finally, join us for next week's episode, where we'll be talking to Carlos Whitaker about the question, how can I get rid of the things holding me back in my marriage? That's going to be an awesome conversation. I can't wait to dive into that. But for now, I'm CJ.
I'm Afton.
I'm Ted.
And thank you for listening.